Hey guys, tonight we slip barefoot into a courtyard, slick with moonlight the stones beneath your feet, still warm from the day's sun. The air is heavy with the smell of old sandalwood and distant incense, curling through the ruins of Nalanda like forgotten whispers. Crickets chirp like tiny drums in the underbrush, and above you, stars blink out coded messages you'll never quite decipher. You're not alone. Leaning against a moss-streaked column is a man in faded ochre robes, bald head, bowed eyes closed, lips unmoving. He hasn't spoken in over a decade, not out of stubbornness or trauma, no, because he claims silence is the only honest language left in a world of broken meanings. And you're about to spend the night learning why. Of course you probably won't survive this in real life. Monastic India in the 8th century, between the dysentery tiger attacks and philosophical turf wars. Yeah, good luck. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly across the stones, trailing behind a novice monk with a flickering clay lamp in his hand. He leads you past dormant lecture halls, darkened shrines, and crumbling walls choked with ivy. The air is thick with hush and history. Nalanda, the ancient seat of learning in Bihar, is quieter than usual tonight. Most of the monks are in their cells, fasting or sleeping, or maybe trying to forget the strange lesson that took place earlier. Because earlier, something happened. A man, a philosopher monk, stood in the great hall, and he said absolutely nothing. And yet somehow everyone felt like they understood. No one can quite agree what they understood, though. Some say he gave a lesson on impermanence. Others that he transmitted an ancient mantra no longer spoken. A few think he just had indigestion and couldn't talk. Historians still argue whether the event was real or a parable passed down to mock the endless debates of medieval scholastics. But you saw the monk, and now you want more. He's waiting under the banyan tree. The lamp flickers as wind rustles the thick hanging roots. The monk raises a hand, not to stop you, but to offer something. A slip of palm leaf parchment, rough-edged and curling with age. There's writing on it, but not in Sanskrit or Pali or Tamil. No, the letters twist in on themselves, arranged in spirals and silence. You tilt it in the moonlight and realize it's not meant to be read. It's meant to be listened to with your eyes. Okay, that's officially weird, but also kinda cool. As you sit on the ground, a toad croaks from somewhere in the pond nearby. The philosopher, still leaning against the column, opens his eyes and looks at you. There's no challenge in his gaze, only invitation. He taps his own chest. Then the air closes his fingers into a loose fist, like gripping something invisible and fragile. You blink. Did he just say understanding? And did you just get it? A breeze passes. Somewhere deep in the temple, ruins a stone drops with a heavy clack. The night exhales. And slowly, the monk begins. Not a lecture, not a sermon, but a kind of silent demonstration. Each movement, his hand across his throat, the way he tilts his head, how his breath slows, speaks. You don't know how, but you begin to understand the premise that maybe language is a map, not the territory. That maybe truth lives in the space between words. That maybe this man, who no one remembers the name of, who left no school or sect, was trying to translate the untranslatable. He places a bowl in front of you. Empty. Then he draws a circle in the dust beside it. Also empty. Then he points at the moon, and somehow in that triangle of bowl circle and moonlight, you see its silence is not absence. It's potential. A blank scroll waiting for you to hear differently. A firefly drifts past your nose. You sneeze loudly. The monk chuckles, a soft, breathy sound that feels like wind against your eardrum. Okay, so he's not humorless. That's good. The last guy who tried this sort of thing got locked in a tower. There's a legend, maybe true, maybe embroidered, that this philosopher once convinced a king to hold an entire conversation using only stillness. The courtiers were not amused. One slipped and fell during the pause to reflect portion. But the king apparently wept. You begin to wonder, why haven't we heard of this man? Why is he only a ghost in the footnotes? The answer you'll learn is that he never wanted to be remembered, because names are just noise, and he wanted to leave behind something else entirely. The philosopher bows, not to you, but to the moon. Then he gestures again to follow, to go back, not just back to the hall, back in time, back to when all of this started, before the scroll, before the silence, before even language itself. And as you rise and take your first step, the air seems to shimmer not with magic, but with memory. You're going to meet a child next, a child who never spoke, a child who listened instead. You feel the ground soften beneath your bare feet. The stone fades into packed earth, the scent of incense replaced by damp hay and cow dung. There's no monastery here, only a village tucked between low hills and tangled forest. The sun is barely up, casting long orange streaks across the thatched rooftops. You hear chickens scratching in the dirt, a sleepy ox snorting near a well, and somewhere a baby crying. But the boy, the one you've come to see, he's not crying. He never does. You find him crouched beneath a neem tree, tracing lines in the dust with a stick. His hair is messy, his tunic loose, and stained with berry juice. He's maybe 5 or 6 years old, though no one's quite sure. He hasn't spoken a single word since birth. Naturally, the village is convinced he's cursed, or gifted, or both. His mother, long exhausted by whispers and sideways glances, has stopped defending him. She just watches from the doorway as you approach, hands on her hips, a resigned tilt to her head. The boy looks up at you. His eyes are too quiet. You crouch beside him. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he taps the ground once with his stick, then turns his gaze to a butterfly hovering nearby. You watch together as it dips and sways wings like painted silk. When it lands on a nearby rock, he smiles slightly and makes a motion, in open palm fluttering. It's the first time you realize he's speaking, just not with sound. The elders have tried everything. They've brought in chanting priests, wandering healers, even one frantic goat sacrifice. The goat, for the record, was very uncooperative. Nothing worked. The boy remained mute, listening, always listening. When the village teacher tried to drill him in basic Sanskrit, he stared blankly until the man gave up and went home to cry into his turmeric tea. But the boy did learn, just not what they wanted. He could mimic the patterns of bird calls, trace the movement of ants with eerie precision, even anticipate when the rains would come just by listening to the wind. He once sat perfectly still through a lightning storm, then got up and made a spiral of pebbles around the banyan tree. Maybe he's not mute, an old weaver once muttered. Maybe we just don't speak the same language. Historians still argue whether the boy was born with a condition like selective mutism or autism, or if he was simply ahead of his time. One fringe theory, rejected by most, but held dear by a few rogue monks, suggests he might have been part of an ancient lineage of silent transmitters, spiritual adepts who believed speech diluted divine truth. You, of course, just think he's interesting. The villagers called him Mauna, which means silence. Not his real name. No one remembers that anymore, but it stuck. You follow Mauna as he wanders through the fields, collecting odd-shaped rocks and broken feathers. Every so often, he stops to feel the bark of a tree or to hold a leaf up to the sun. He's not distracted. He's studying, cataloging the world in a way you've never bothered to. At one point, he sits beside a sleeping cow, places his palm gently on its flank, and closes his eyes. After a minute, he stands and walks away. You follow, wondering what he learned. "Strange boy," a woman mutters as you pass. Never cries. Never asks for things. Doesn't even scream when he gets stung. You file that away. Most of us spend our lives desperately trying to be heard. Mana, meanwhile, seems content not to be. One afternoon, he climbs a hill and sits cross-legged at the top. Below the village sprawls in miniature the forest looming just beyond. You sit beside him. For hours, Neither of you speaks. And yet the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels full, like a bowl of water that reflects everything but contains nothing. Eventually, he picks up a sharp twig and draws something in the dust. Not a word, not a picture, something in between, spirals, dots, concentric circles, an odd little notch here and there. Looks like nonsense a passing shepherd snorts, but you're not so sure. At night, you lie in the small hut set aside for visitors. You listen to the sounds of the village, the crackle of fires, soft murmurs, the distant cough of an old man with questionable lungs. And you wonder, is it possible Mauna understands too much? That language, for all its beauty, has limits, and he's decided to live beyond them. The village priest certainly doesn't think so. He shows up one day with a scroll and a mission to make the boy chant a mantra. It's a simple one, just a few sacred syllables repeated over and over. The priest leans in close, his breath oddly spicy, and insists, "You must say it to understand it." Mauna tilts his head. Then he places his fingers gently on the priest's lips. Oof, awkward. Everyone gasps. A child silencing a priest? That's basically medieval social suicide. The priest leaves in a huff. That night, Mauna disappears. They find him 2 days later, sitting by a stream miles away, scribbling in the dirt. When asked what he was doing, okay, gestured. At frantically, he mimics the flutter of wind and mouths one silent breath. A few believe he was listening to the river's thoughts. You start to believe it too, because whatever this child is doing, it's not nonsense. It's not defiance. It's translation, a kind of decoding. And while the world pushes him to speak, to conform, to make noise, he's trying to show that truth might live in the quiet corners instead. He's going to leave the village soon. The monastery is calling, and he's ready. Not to learn what others know, but to remember what they've forgotten. You're older now, or at least it feels that way. The village is far behind you, swallowed by mist and memory. You walk alongside Mauna, though now no one calls him that. Here at the monastery, they've given him a new name. A long one full of vowels and syllables that echo off stone walls like falling water. But he never answers to it. He just bows politely and continues walking. Nalanda is unlike anything you imagined. It's not just a school, it's a universe. Sprawling courtyards, bronze bells that chime like thunder softened by honey. Thousands of monks in ochre robes debating philosophy while goats chew quietly in the corners. Scrolls by the thousands are stacked in towers wrapped in red silk, some so old they're believed to be copied from even older, now vanished civilizations. Here you're supposed to chant, to debate, to memorize sutras. Everyone does it. Everyone except Mauna. Instead, he listens. At night, when the others chant from memory, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. He's outside, watching moths burn themselves against lanterns. When a teacher delivers a brilliant lecture on impermanence, Mauna draws spirals in the dust outside the hall. Naturally, this gets him in trouble. One morning, a stern monk confronts him. The kind who believes enlightenment comes from volume. He demands to know why Mauna refuses to participate. Why he's always silent, always scribbling, always distant. Mauna says nothing, of course, but he does smile. And then, in one single motion, he picks up a bowl of water and tips it over. The monk gasps. A student drops his scroll. It's a mess. Or is it? Because in that one act, Mauna has perfectly illustrated the essence of impermanence. No words, no diagrams, just water motion, and now a puddle soaking into the dirt. Clever boy, someone whispers. Disrespectful, mutters someone else. Historians still argue whether this moment marked a turning point in Nalanda's approach to nonverbal teachings, or whether it was quietly erased from the records by monks who just really didn't like getting their socks wet. You meanwhile start to notice something strange. Mauna has begun to write, but not like the other scribes. His scrolls don't use the traditional Devanagari or Brahmi scripts. Instead, he invents his own glyphs, looping symbols, mirrored lines, empty spaces that seem to hum if you stare at them too long. At first, The other monks mock it. This looks like the doodles of a distracted goat, one says. But then someone realizes he's writing in response to questions before they're asked. One afternoon, you and a few curious monks decide to test him. You agree on a question, something obscure, something philosophical. Is truth static or shaped by perception? You never speak it aloud. You just think it. He hands you a scroll 5 minutes later. On it, a series of shapes. A cracked mirror, a spiral, a single dot, and in the center, an open eye, drawn with such stillness it makes your skin tingle. No one knows what it means, but everyone feels. It means something. It's unnerving and addictive. The younger monks begin gathering around him. They mimic his stillness, try to copy his glyphs. One even shaves his eyebrows because words grow from the head, whatever that means. A small circle forms disciples, really, who begin to communicate using only gestures and expressions. The elders are not amused. These theatrics disrupt the sanctity of the Sangha, the head teacher grumbles. Communication must be clear, clean, controlled. Like dry toast, someone mutters. But Mana's influence grows. One fringe scholar, likely sleep-deprived and full of fermented barley, suggests that Mana might be channeling an ancient technique known as anahatavani, the unstruck voice, a mythical concept in certain yogic traditions that refers to a sound heard not by the ears, but by the inner consciousness. It's said that advanced practitioners can hear truth directly or passing the distortions of language. The scholar was later found asleep in a rice barrel. So take that theory with some turmeric. Still something's happening. Mana begins to isolate more, spending long hours near the sacred lake or in abandoned towers. You find him once standing perfectly still in a circle of ants, eyes closed, arms raised. When you call his name, well, nickname, he doesn't react. Only when the ants disperse does he look up. There are syllables even they avoid. He mouths silently. Okay, you're either in the presence of a future sage, or he's slowly going full Yoda. One evening, he returns to the great lecture hall, not to listen, but to interrupt. He walks to the center bows and lays down one of his spiral-written scrolls. No one reads it. They watch it. Stare at the curves, the breaks, the lines that form not messages, but moods. It feels like the whole room exhales. No one speaks, not even the crows. A few monks weep. When the bell tolls, he bows again and walks out. As he passes you, he smiles. You realize he's not trying to be mysterious. He's just trying to be accurate, because to him words are like smoke, pretty, but unreliable. And what he's trying to translate is not ideas, it's experience. The other monks are rattled. Tomorrow they'll challenge him. A formal debate, with rules, with stakes. And Mana will not say a word. The air is thick with tension, not the dramatic storm brewing kind. No, this tension is quieter, more like the long inhale before a temple bell rings. You and 100 others gather in the cloister, your sandals damp from morning dew, your heart doing this awkward little cha-cha between excitement and dread. Because today Mauna is going to meet someone no one expected. Not a monk, not a king, not even a scholar, but an ascetic. A forest dweller, one of those whispered about hermits who supposedly live in caves and eat only ash and sunlight. The kind of person you're warned not to follow into the woods, unless you're very brave or very lost. Guess which one you are? It starts with a rumor. A traveling merchant arrives with a cart full of glass beads and questionable pears, and casually mentions a silent one living near the Bodhi tree. Not a Bodhi tree, the Bodhi tree. The one where Siddhartha himself reached enlightenment, or so the story goes. The merchant shrugs. He just sits there, all day. Doesn't blink, doesn't eat. Birds land on him. Naturally, Mana hears about it. Or maybe he just feels it. Either way, he's gone by dawn, and you of course follow. The walk is long, hot, and mosquito heavy. You pass fields of rice paddies, cross a river using a suspiciously rickety bamboo bridge, and finally enter a forest so dense it feels like it's swallowing sunlight. Vines drape like curtains. Monkeys scream from invisible heights. And somewhere in the distance, a peacock shrieks like a banshee with commitment issues. You begin to regret everything until you see it. A clearing. And in the center, a figure. He's draped in pale cloth bones, visible through paper-thin skin eyes, half-lidded like he's watching a dream he forgot waking from. Around him, silence so heavy, it muffles even the wind. Mauna doesn't hesitate. He walks forward and sits. You stay back, because something about this place feels like a secret not meant for you. For hours, nothing happens. They just sit there, breathing. Not even that you're not sure either of them is breathing. It's like watching two statues meditate. You doze off at one point. Wake up, still sitting. Then finally, movement. The ascetic opens one hand. Inside a stone. He hands it to Mauna. It's smooth oval and warm from his palm. Mauna accepts it like it's a crown. He nods once, then gets up. That's it. No fireworks, no glowing auras, not even a cryptic riddle, just a stone. Later, you'll ask him what it meant. He'll place the stone on the ground, draw a spiral around it, and press his finger to your lips. That's the whole explanation. But something changed. Mauna's different now. Not in a glowing chosen one way. More emptied. Like whatever question he'd been holding inside was finally answered without words. Historians still argue whether this meeting was real, or apocryphal, or borrowed from some earlier Jain or yogic tale. One fringe text claims the ascetic was a tulpa, a manifestation of Mauna's own mind made visible. Another theory, it was a test, that Mauna had reached such stillness that he attracted stillness itself. Honestly, that theory might hold more water than the pears that merchant was selling. You walk back to the monastery in silence, but this time you feel different. The wind sounds more musical. The trees seem to sway in deliberate rhythm. Even your own heartbeat feels like it's syncing to some rhythm you can't quite name. At dinner, Mauna doesn't eat. He just smiles at the stubos to the cook and returns to his cell. That night he paints. You didn't even know monks could paint. He mixes lamp soot with sesame oil and begins brushing symbols on the wall. They're similar to his usual spiral glyphs, but looser, more fluid. Some look like waves. Others resemble sleeping birds. And at the center, a single circle, untouched blank. It's the word for silence, he mouths. One young monk asks what it means. Mauna taps his chest, then points at the moon, then smiles. You think you get it. You also think you don't. That's kind of the point. The next morning, the circle of silent students grows. They don't just copy his symbols anymore. They begin meditating in pairs, trying to speak emotions, using only eye contact and breath. It's weird. It's beautiful. It's also extremely awkward for anyone who forgot to brush their teeth. One day during meditation, Mauna lifts the stone the ascetic gave him and places it in the center of the room. Nobody touches it. Nobody needs to. Its presence feels like punctuation, a full stop to the noise. Then without warning, Mauna tears a scroll in half, gasps echo. He bows to the fragments, then begins writing again, this time backwards. Mirror script. The kind that forces the reader to slow down, reverse their eyes, pay attention. You realize he's not rejecting language. He's reshaping it. Not for speed, not for convenience, but for depth. The silence he met beneath the Bodhi tree wasn't empty. It was structured, disciplined, and now he's trying to map it, to bottle it, to hand it to others without saying a word. You lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would happen if the whole world stopped talking for a day. What would rise in the quiet? Laughter, fear, truth. Mauna sleeps soundly beside a half-written scroll. You smile. The great debate is tomorrow, and he's going to show the world without uttering a syllable that silence is not ignorance. It's power. Morning comes like a drum roll, slow and deliberate. The monastery is already buzzing. Bells ring, not with their usual lazy grace, but in quick, anxious bursts. Pigeons scatter from the rooftops. A squirrel knocks over a monk's breakfast. Today is not normal. Today is debate day. Now, for most people, the words formal philosophical debate sound about as exciting as stale lentils. But here at Nalanda, it's a full-blown event. Robes are ironed, scrolls are unfurled, arguments are rehearsed like battle hymns. Spectators cram onto steps and rooftops. There are whispered wagers, side glances, and a cart selling roasted mung beans that somehow smells like ambition. You squeeze into a spot beside an elder who smells like old sandalwood and vague disappointment. His commentary begins before anything else does. They say he's never lost a debate, the man mutters. Then again, they also said, turmeric was a cure for heartbreak. And here we are. In the center of the Great Hall, a raised platform has been cleared. On it, Mana seated cross-legged back straight, eyes closed. Across from him, his challenger, a renowned Brahmin scholar with more syllables in his name than most people have teeth. Let's call him Sir Verbose. Sir Verbose clears his throat dramatically. The rules are simple. Present a thesis. Defend it. Refute the opponent's stance. Summarize. Win applause prestige, possibly free rice cakes for a week. There's just one problem. Mana doesn't speak. So when Sir Verbose delivers his opening line, something about the necessity of articulation in preserving Dharma Mauna does nothing. A cough echoes. A fly buzzes past. Then finally, Mana lifts his hand. Slowly, with the grace of a falling leaf, he draws a small circle in the air. Then places his palm over his own mouth. Laughter ripples through the crowd. Sir Verbose scowls. Silence, he says, is not proof. Mana taps his chest once, then points to the crowd, then to the sky. It's so subtle you almost miss it. But somehow, he's just asked a question. Must truth be spoken to be true? Historians still argue whether this exchange marked the beginning of performative epistemology in Eastern philosophical circles, or whether it was just a monk pulling interpretive mime on a skeptical scholar. Sir Verbose understandably flustered launches into a blistering second round. He references texts, quotes sages, cites 6 schools of logic, and uses a metaphor involving mangoes that may or may not be plagiarism. Mauna just watches, then picks up a clay bowl from the floor, turns it upside down, and places it between them. The audience gasps. Okay, context in Nalanda debate culture, placing a bowl upside down mid-argument is a symbolic move. It means your container is full, but with the wrong thing. Boom. Sir Verbose turns red. He paces. He rants. He quotes again, this time louder, as if volume can fill the space Mana's silence has carved open. Meanwhile, Mana closes his eyes. His breathing slows. He becomes still. A strange thing happens. The room quiets. People stop shifting. Even the crows on the roof fall silent. It's not submission. It's attention. As if everyone's waiting for a sound that doesn't come, and that absence becomes the message. The debate bell tolls. Sir Verbose sits down in frustration, sweat darkening the folds of his robes. A younger monk leans over to you. So, who won? You shrug. But your smile says enough. Mauna bows, then walks off the platform. Not a word, not a gesture, just a soft gust of wind behind him, like even the air respects his exit. Later that day, a scroll is tacked to the monastery's central board. It's unsigned, but you know the writing backward loops, spiral margins, clusters of empty space. Its title translated roughly, Response Without Sound, a treatise on the unspoken. Inside, it outlines a new method of debate, one that relies on breath motion and spatial metaphor. It proposes that meaning can be shared rather than argued. That truth is not a conclusion, but an alignment. It's radical. Some call it heresy. Others call it brilliance. One monk says it gave him a nosebleed. The elders convene. They argue as elders do. They wave scrolls and raise eyebrows. But no one can deny what happened. Because while Sir Verbose had facts, Mana had presence. And somehow presence won. That night the silent circle meets again. Larger now. A few skeptical monks even join. They sit in a ring, hands resting lightly on their knees, eyes half closed. You notice something. No one looks bored. No one checks for beetles. They're in it, listening with their skin, feeling with their attention. Afterward, Mana lays down another scroll. This one is different. It's not written in glyphs or spirals. It's blank. Not white, not empty, just still. And at the bottom, in tiny inverted letters, some things cannot be taught, only remembered. You sleep that night under a sky so quiet, it feels like it's holding its breath. Tomorrow, Mana will begin writing his masterwork, a scroll no one will read the same way twice. But before that happens, he'll sit beneath the banyan tree one more time. You'll go with him, because now you don't just watch his silence, you understand it. You wake up before the sun for once. There's a chill in the air that clings to your skin like a whispered warning. Across the courtyard, a few monks shuffle around, rubbing sleep from their eyes and muttering about dreams they can't quite remember. But Mana is already gone. You find him where else beneath the banyan tree? The same tree from that first night, only now it's wrapped in colored cloth and half shadowed by the morning fog. He sits cross-legged on a flattened mat of woven grass, back straight, fingers poised over a sheet of fresh palm leaf parchment. Today he begins the scroll. Not a scroll, the scroll. The one whispered about centuries later in strange monasteries and quiet libraries. The one no one could ever fully translate. The one that scholars call the Silence Sutra, though Mana himself never gave it a title. Titles, after all, are noisy. You sit nearby, not too close watching. The materials are humble: a bowl of soot mixed with mustard oil, a simple reed pen, a series of palm leaves trimmed and polished. But the act feels enormous, like history is holding its breath again. He doesn't write in straight lines. He begins with a circle, then spirals outward, filling the space with glyphs, mirrored runes, and pauses literal gaps where there should be words. The symbols twist and wrap around themselves, looping like vines through a trellis of blankness. You lean closer and realize some of the lines are meant to be read forward, others backward, and some only when you close your eyes and picture the image in reverse. It's beautiful and completely baffling. Still, it feels true. He works for hours, no breaks, no sighs, not even a sip of water. At one point, a curious novice approaches. "Master," he whispers, "how will anyone read it?" Mana stops writing, looks at the boy, then gently places his hand over the boy's chest. His heart and mouths a single word: "Here." The boy doesn't understand, but he bows anyway. Later, another monk suggests transcribing the scroll into proper Sanskrit, to make it more accessible. For teaching purposes, he insists. Mana smiles, shrugs, and then eats one of the palm leaves. Okay, maybe a bit dramatic, but the message is clear. This isn't a text meant to be translated. It's meant to be experienced. Like silence, like music without notes. Historians still argue whether Mana created an actual language or a form of meditative art. Some say the symbols were based on ancient Indus Valley inscriptions. Others insist they were random, meant to short-circuit the logical mind. One even proposed the scroll was written for future humans, those who would no longer rely on words at all. Fringe, sure, but not the wildest theory you've heard today. As the scroll grows, you notice strange details. The spacing between glyphs matches the rhythm of breath. The margins align with lunar phases. Some leaves, when stacked, form geometric patterns that echo the sacred mandalas of Tibetan mysticism. You're not sure if it's intentional. You're not sure if any of it is, but it works. Reading it is like listening to music underwater. You start to feel things instead of decipher things. On the 15th day, Mana adds a final glyph, a single dot suspended in blank space. He places it precisely at the center of a large untouched leaf, then seals the scroll with thread spun from lotus fiber. It's finished. No ceremony, no announcement. He simply places it in a clay box, ties it shut, and tucks it into a recess in the banyan's gnarled roots. Later, you'll ask him what it contains. He'll look at you, eyes soft and mouth the sound of things before they had names. You won't know what he means. Not yet. But you'll think about it every night for the rest of your life. Word of the scroll spreads. Some monks are fascinated. Others are furious. It's nonsense, one cries. It's genius, cries another. You just sit under the banyan and try to remember how it felt watching him write. Because that, more than the scroll, is the lesson. One night you find Mana gazing up at the stars. He doesn't look triumphant or satisfied. Just still. He lifts a hand, traces a line from one star to another and mouths. There's more to say, but not with this. He pats the clay box once, then walks away. You sit alone with the box. It's warm, heavy in the way old things are. You want to open it? You really do. But something inside you whispers, not yet. Instead, you lie back against the roots of the banyan. Listen to the rustle of leaves, the low hoot of an owl, and the gentle hum of silence. Because tonight words aren't enough, and finally, that feels okay. The rains come early that year. They pour down in waves, turning the dusty paths of Nalanda into rivers of rust-colored sludge. Robes are hiked up. Scrolls are tucked into waxed wraps. Monks scurry from hall to hall like saffron-colored beetles. You try to stay dry under the eaves, but moisture finds you anyway, creeping through walls, under doors, and into your bones. And yet Mauna doesn't seem to notice. He walks in the rain like it's a language, lets it soak him, soaks it in return. When someone hands him a palm leaf umbrella, he simply smiles and uses it as a drum, tapping out quiet rhythms with his fingers. You follow him one evening through the mud, slipping more than once. He stops by the western gate, where a low crowd murmurs and jostles umbrellas, bobbing like jellyfish in the storm. There's a royal envoy in town. They've come to observe the monastery's best thinkers for the upcoming Court of Voices, a grand gathering of scholars, rulers, and spiritual leaders. Think Olympic Games, but for philosophy. Mauna's name is not on the list, but he's about to change that. 2 days later, you're in the Great Hall again. The debate platform has been polished, the audience expanded. This isn't just Nalanda now, there are foreigners. Persian translators, Chinese monks, one man in a very expensive hat who might be an emissary from Baghdad. At the center sits the Maharaja himself, draped in embroidered silk rings, glinting from every other finger. He's got the look of a man who enjoys metaphors, and even more so, watching others get tangled in them. Each speaker comes forward, bows, delivers their carefully prepared philosophies. They speak of a duality, of liberation, of ethics, and time. The crowd applauds, politely nods thoughtfully, even gasps when a Jain monk uses a particularly spicy parable involving a mango, a mirror, and a sleeping ox. Then, unexpectedly, Mana steps forward. No introduction, no permission, no sound. The hall goes still. The guards hesitate. A few elders murmur. You see the king raise an eyebrow, but he doesn't stop him. He wants to see what this is. Mana walks to the center and opens nothing. He brings no scroll. Instead, he kneels, reaches into his robe, pulls out a bowl, a simple wooden bowl, cracked on one side, stained from use. He places it before the king, then turns it over slowly and sets it upside down. Silence. The Maharaja leans forward. Mana lifts a single finger and draws a spiral in the air. Then he places his palms together, bows, and steps back. That's it. You hold your breath. For 5 full heartbeats, no one speaks. Then the king's stoic unreadable lets out a sound that might be a chuckle. Interesting, he says. Explain. Mauna does not. He just lifts his hands and taps his chest twice. One monk gasps. Another begins crying. It's like a stone dropped into a pond, the ripples invisible but deep. Later, no one will agree on what it meant. Some say the bowl symbolized the self-view turned inside out to reveal emptiness. Others say it was a rebuke, that in a hall so full of talk, silence was the only honest argument. One bold scholar suggested it was actually a visual pun. A flipped bowl is also a closed mouth. Historians still argue whether this was a protest, a parable, or performance art. But the king, he nods once, then says simply, "Let him speak as he does." And just like that, Mana is granted place in the court of voices, a spot reserved not for those who argue loudest, but those who say something no one else can. You catch up to him after. He's drying his hands on his robe, utterly unbothered. So you say, "What did you say up there?" He turns and signs the motion for a falling leaf, then a mirror, then a sleeping ox. You stare. Wait, you whisper. "You were quoting the Jain monk, weren't you?" He grins. "Okay, that's 2 jokes in 1 gesture. This man is dangerous." The scroll, meanwhile, remains untouched, sealed inside its lotus thread box. Some believe he's planning to present it at the royal court. Others think he's waiting for something, or someone. That night, you walk with him along the edge of the flood-swollen river. Frogs sing. Lightning bugs flicker like forgotten sparks. He's quiet more than usual, thoughtful. "Do you ever wish people understood more?" you ask. He looks at you, then signs the word for full cup. Oh, you laugh, because of course, too much understanding leaves no room for wonder. Still, something lingers in the air, something tense. You can feel it even in the stillness. Something is coming, a shift, a storm that has nothing to do with rain. The first sign is the birds. Normally, they swarm the rooftops of Nalanda in great noisy flocks, gossiping like bored courtiers. But this morning, nothing. Just the creak of bamboo, the rustle of tarps, and the distant uneasy silence that tells you something is off. You step outside barefoot. The air smells like smoke. Not incense, not cooking fires. The wrong kind of smoke. At first, it's just whispers. A merchant arrives early, breathless eyes wide. The guards are gone. A young monk runs across the courtyard, scrolls clutched tight to his chest. They're coming. Riders. South Gate. You find Mana standing perfectly still by the banyan tree, watching the horizon. He doesn't look afraid, just focused, like a man trying to hear the final note of a song before it fades completely. Then the bells ring, but not the usual round resonant gong. This one is sharp, urgent. The fire bell. It happens fast, too fast. Screams rise from the western corridor. You see torches, dozens, maybe more, moving like frantic stars through the darkened passages. The scent of burning oil floods your nose. Soldiers storm the outer walls. Not an invading army, exactly, more like hired blades. Raiders, thieves. Someone paid them, and someone gave them the maps. You want to run, but your feet stay rooted, because in the center of the chaos, Mana still stands. And then you see it, the all-clay box, still resting at the base of the banyan, still sealed. "Take it," you whisper. But he doesn't move. He just looks at you. Then back at the monastery. The library is burning. The great Nalanda library. 7 stories of palm leaf manuscripts, birch bark scrolls, ancient copperplate texts is collapsing in flame. Some monks try to form a line with buckets. Others weep as they carry out what little they can. You sprint toward the eastern tower. It's chaos. Heat slaps you in the face. The air is thick with ash and memories. Inside, you see broken shelves, melting wax seals, charred silk ribbons. You grab a handful of manuscripts, doesn't matter which, and bolt out again. Back in the courtyard, Mana is gone. So is the scroll. The banyan stands alone, wrapped in smoke leaves curling. For hours, the fire rages. By morning, Nalanda is a skeleton. Blackened walls, crumbling towers. Scrolls turn to ash. Silence. Real silence. The kind that isn't wise or peaceful or meditative. The kind that follows after something beautiful dies. You search for days, weeks, but Mana is nowhere. Some say he died in the fire, that he refused to leave his scroll and burned with it. Others whisper he escaped, vanished into the forest with the clay box in hand. One rumor claims a single monk saw him speaking. Actually, speaking, to one of the raiders. Said the man dropped his sword and ran screaming. Said Mana's voice wasn't angry or loud, just true. Historians still argue whether the fire was intentional or part of a larger political purge. Some suspect it was revenge against the silent school Mana had begun to build. The royal court, after all, had grown nervous. Hard to control a man who doesn't talk. No one knows who paid the raiders. But the message was clear. Ibuwa, stop teaching silence, or silence will fall. Years pass. Nalanda is rebuilt in pieces, but never the same. The scroll is never found. The banyan withers, and the memory of Mana becomes a question with no answer. But you remember everything. The bowl, the spiral, the falling leaf, and you remember that moment when all the noise stopped and for a breathless heartbeat, the world listened. Because Mana's legacy was never just a scroll. It was a way of kamasinku, of feeling truth instead of spelling it, a way of holding space for the unspeakable. You leave Nalanda, carry what little you salvaged, and begin your own wandering. But sometimes late at night in a strange city beneath a rustling tree, you think you see him. A flash of ochre robes, a quiet nod, a spiral drawn in the dust with a bare finger. Maybe it's just memory, or maybe he's still out there waiting, watching, writing the world with nothing but stillness. You spend years following shadows. Mana is gone, but his silence is not. It lingers like incense in forgotten places. And so you go east-west, wherever rumors carry you, like wind pushes smoke. In the high hills of Tibet, you find a hermit who hums without sound. He draws shapes in the air that look suspiciously like Mana's spirals. When you show him a charcoal sketch of the Silence Sutra's glyphs, he bows not to you, but to the paper. Ah, he mouths. The one who taught with his breath. No name, no date, but something clicks. You keep moving. In a quiet chamber of a ruined Persian library, a Sufi mystic shows you a scroll wrapped in old cloth. It's brittle with age, the ink faded to ghostliness, but there beneath the calligraphy, someone has drawn a tiny bowl upside down. The shape isn't Persian. It isn't even Arabic. It's Mana's language, stitched like a hidden truth beneath layers of commentary. The mystic shrugs. Found it in a monastery shipment. No one reads it. Too empty. But you don't try to read it. You just feel it. It's not the Silent Sutra, but it's close. A cousin maybe. A branch grown from the same quiet tree. In Istanbul, a merchant with too many rings shows you a sealed box for sale. He calls it the dead tongue. Inside, blank vellum pages marked only with mirrored dots in a spiral. You hold it, and suddenly the noise of the market fades. You hand it back. Too soon the sound returns. You don't have the coin. But it doesn't matter. The merchant is watching you too closely, and you get the sense that silence, true silence, can't be bought anyway. Eventually, you find yourself in Paris. It's raining. Because of course it is. You're sitting in a cramped antiquarian shop that smells like dust and secondhand coffee. The owner is ancient, possibly fossilized. He says very little, but when you mention your search, he raises a trembling finger and points to a locked drawer. Inside is a single page, one page, yellowed, warped, written in a style that makes your chest tighten. The symbols are unmistakable, Mana's script, except this time the glyphs don't spiral. They got radiate. From a single point in the center, a perfect black dot. You stare, for a long time. Finally you whisper, "What is it?" The old man smiles, or maybe grimaces. Hard to tell with that many wrinkles. Don't know, he croaks. But whenever someone reads it, he pauses. They leave in silence. Later you sit by the Seine, the city glowing behind you. You open your notebook and try to draw what you remember, but the lines don't come. Instead, your fingers rest on the page unmoving, because you realize something. You've spent years chasing Mana's scroll, but maybe the scroll wasn't the point. Maybe the real Silent Sutra isn't a thing. Maybe it's a practice, a perspective, a question you never ask out loud. Did Mana want to be found? Historians still argue over what happened to the original scroll. Some say it was burned in the Nalanda fire. Others believe it was hidden passed through secret hands, like a whisper made of paper. But you know this much. Wherever it is, it was never meant to be owned, just remembered. You breathe deeply. The city hums around you. Voices, footsteps, music from a saxophone nearby. But beneath all that, there's a rhythm, a shape, a silent spiral of meaning. You close your notebook, stand, and for the first time in years, you say nothing, not because you're afraid, but because you're finally beginning to understand. You return to where it all began. Not Nalanda, not anymore. The ruins are cold now, part of the earth again. Vines have reclaimed the stone. The banyan tree is gone, but a younger one grows nearby, curling upward, like it remembers something old. You sit cross-legged beneath it, just like he used to. It's been decades. Your legs creak like old floorboards. Your hands are marked with time, but your memory's still sharp. Sharper than most. You remember the bowl, the spiral, the first time you didn't understand but felt it anyway. Now you wonder if that was the point all along. You close your eyes, breathe in, and listen. The wind hums through the branches. Not a song, not a word. Just presence, just movement, just a rhythm too honest for translation. You pull out a small bundle. Inside, fragments you've collected over the years. A half-charred scroll edge, a page from Istanbul, a rubbing from that Parisian glyph. They don't fit together, but when you lay them side by side, you feel something, not a message, a mood. Like when you were a child and didn't have the words for sadness, but knew when someone was about to cry? Like that. You spend the afternoon arranging the pieces, not trying to decode them anymore, just listening to how they sit, how they breathe. You trace the mirrored letters with your finger. Draw a spiral in the dirt beside them and smile, because now you understand Mauna didn't fail. He didn't vanish. He didn't leave nothing behind. He left everything. He left you a way to listen, a way to hear the world, not as language, but as feeling, not as noise, but as rhythm, not as answer, but as presence. People will keep searching for his scroll, keep trying to publish it, explain it, decode it. But some things aren't puzzles to be solved. They're mirrors. And when you finally stop trying to make sense of them, that's when they show you yourself. You lie back. The tree rustles above you. The sun begins to set in long, slow ribbons of amber and soft gray. You think about Mauna. You think about silence. And you wonder, did silence ever speak? Or did we simply forget how to listen? You breathe out. Feel the air on your skin, the ground beneath your spine, the pulse in your fingers. It's all still there. The sutra isn't lost. It's just quiet. And tonight, so are you. The light fades slowly now. Everything softens. Even the distant birds seem to hush, as if they too are leaning into the quiet with you. The world gets a little heavier, but in the good way. Like a thick blanket, pulled gently over tired shoulders. You let your breath stretch out. No rush. Each inhale slower. Each exhale longer. Your thoughts stop rushing to fill the silence and instead begin to settle, like dust floating down in an empty hall. You remember the spiral, the bowl, the monk who never raised his voice, but somehow made the loudest sound of all. And you realize silence isn't empty. It's full of things we rarely take time to notice. The weight of our breath, the comfort of stillness, the shape of a thought before it becomes a word. Let yourself drift in that space now. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to solve the mystery tonight. Just rest in it. Let it hum around you like soft wind through leaves. Let it wrap you up like Mauna's robe. Let it remind you that not everything needs to be spoken to be real. The world still turns. The stories still wait. And tomorrow, they'll be here. But for now, just this quiet, this slow, steady breath, this silence that isn't silence at all. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sweet dreams.